Hello, welcome back. Today we will be combining the distributive property and combining like terms to simplify today's expression. So we're taking our last two lessons and we're combining them in this one. So in your table of contents, you need to be adding, simplifying expressions. I just put continued. You can add using both the distributive property and combining like terms if you wish. I'm on page 25-26. Again, we might not be on the exact same page number because you may be using more for other assignments. Okay, so here, our objective today is to simplify expressions using both the distributive property and combining like terms. Okay, our essential question is how to simplify expressions using the distributive property and combining like terms. We need to follow two steps. So our first step, step one, is to distribute if needed. So we need to distribute first. And then our step two will be to combine the like terms. So those are our two main steps. So we've done both of them separately. So today we're just putting them together. All right, let's take a look at our first example. So I want to look to see if I need to distribute, which really means, do I have parentheses? Yes, I need to distribute this 8. So I'm going to distribute the 8 to two terms on the inside. So here's one, here's the other. So I end up with 8 times 2w plus 8 times 3. And I'm not distributing to the term outside the parentheses, so it's only distributed twice. So now you can see that that 8 was distributed 2 times. So we multiply. So 8 times 2 is 16, so I have 16w plus 8 times 3, which is 24. And then I'm bringing down this minus 5w. So now I've completed the distributive property. Now I need to move to step 2, which is combine my like terms. So I need to see if I have like terms. And in this case, I do. I have 16w is a like term with negative 5w. Remember to include the sign in front. So I'm going to line them up. And then we add, just like before. So 16 plus a negative 5 is 11w. And then I have this 24. So now my final answer is going to be 11w. That's a positive 24, so it becomes a plus 24. All right, let's take a look at another example. So number 2, I need to check to see if I need to distribute, and I do. I'm distributing this 5, okay, and it's going to be distributed to 2 terms. So I've got my 2 terms here. So I'm going to distribute that 5, so I end up with 5 times 2k might need to give myself a little bit more room. Just 5 times 2k plus 5 times negative 3. And I haven't done anything with this 2k out front, so I need to bring that down. So now I'm going to multiply. So I've got negative 2k plus 5 times 2 is 10k, plus 5 times a negative 3 is negative 15. Watch those negative signs. They tend to mess us up. So the next thing I need to do is combine like terms. So I see like terms negative 2k and 10k. So I'm going to line those up. And then we add. So I get 8k and a minus 15. So altogether that becomes 8k minus 15. All right, let's take a look at another example. Okay, so this time notice I have 2 sets of parentheses. So I have to distribute not 1, but 2 numbers. So the first one should probably be pretty easy. We're going to distribute this to 2 terms. So I've got 7n and negative 1n. Over here, I also have a number to distribute. And remember, that number is a negative 1. Okay, this tends to be the type of problem that messes us up a little bit. So I'm distributing a negative 1. So let's do our distributing first. So I'm going to distribute 2 and negative 1. Now, we can do the distributing all in one step. So I get 2 times 7n plus 2 times a negative 1 plus negative 1 times 10n plus negative 1 times 15. Okay, and then you'll notice I still have this 8 out front that I have not done anything with. Okay, so we need to simplify by multiplying here. So I'm just going to multiply all those ones. So I'm not doing anything with 8. I got to multiply 2 times 7, which is 14, and that has an n with it. 2 times a negative 1 is a negative 2. Negative 1 times a positive 10 is a positive 10n. And then negative 1 times 15 is negative 15. Okay, so now the next thing I need to do is look for like terms. So here, all my constants are like terms. So 8 is a like term with negative 2, which is a like term with negative 15. I also have like terms 14n and 10n. So I'm going to line them up. I'm going to line up my variables first. That typically is how we see that. And I've got 8, negative 2, negative 15. And we're going to add them up. So I have 14. I messed up somewhere. Oh, right here. This should be a negative 10. The reason I knew I messed up is because when I looked back up here at this negative 1, that 10 should be a negative. Which means this 10 here should be a negative. Because I know when I multiply by a negative 1, my sign switches. Okay, and like I said, those tend to be the ones where we make mistakes. And so what happened is right here, I probably thought I wrote a negative sign, when the reality is I wrote a multiplication sign. So I thought negative 1 times negative 10 is a positive 10. when really it was negative 1 times 10. This is very important why we have to write clearly, okay? If we mess up on our writing, we won't know what the signs are, and it's so important in math to make sure we're paying close attention to that. All right, so let me keep going. So now I've got 14 minus 10n, which is 4n. 8 minus 2 is 6, and then 6 plus a negative 15 is a negative 9. Okay, and then as you can see, that's already put together for us, but I'll just write it. 4n minus 9. All right, let's take a look at our next example. I need to check to see if I need to distribute, and I do, right here, this negative 2. Okay, here's another one that kind of messes us up. We got to make sure we're including that negative when we distribute this 2. And this time I have 3 terms. Okay, so let's go ahead and distribute that. So I've got negative 2. This time I'm going to do a little bit better job of my multiplication signs. Times 5x plus 2. Plus negative 2 times a negative 9x plus a negative 2 times 1. Now I still got some other things there that I need to bring down. So I had this 3x out in front, and I had this 6 at the end. Okay, so now I can go ahead and just simplify. 3x, negative 2 times 5 is negative 10. And notice, like, I'm saying negative 10. See, you can kind of, like, keep these terms separate. So we know this is a negative 10. If you were to cover it up with your finger, it would look like a negative 10. But if I read it all together, it looks like 3x minus 10x squared. Okay, so now I have negative 2 times negative 9. So this becomes a positive 18. X, and then negative 2 times 1 becomes a negative 2. And then I have that plus 6. Okay, so I've got all the distributing done. Now I need to look for like terms. So I see like terms 3x and 18x. And then I also see like terms negative 2 and 6 because our constants are like terms. So I'm going to line those up so I have 18x and 3x. And then I have 6 and negative 2. And then I've got this negative 10x squared. And we just add them up. So 18x plus 3x is going to give me 21x. 6 minus 2, or 6 plus a negative 2, is going to give me 4. And then I still have this negative 10x squared. Now we can go ahead and write 21x plus 4 minus 10x squared, but that's typically not how we see it. We usually always see the one with the larger exponent written in front. So we're going to say negative 10x squared plus 21x, because that's a positive 21x, plus 4. The commutative property tells me I can write these in any order as long as I keep the sign in front of it. So over here, this is a positive 21x. So as long as that sign stays with it, I can write them in any order. at this time you're ready to try it on your own. Okay, so go ahead and pause this video and try this one on your own. Hopefully at this time you've worked problem 5 out. 2x plus 8 times 3x plus 6y minus 7x plus 2y. So let's see how you did. So what you probably should have recognized first, and you're going to notice I really utilize highlighters in math. It helps us. Okay, so what we should recognize is the 8 is what needs to be distributed, and you should recognize that it gets distributed 3 times. Okay, and then you multiply, so we end up with 2x plus 24x plus 48y plus minus 56x plus 2y. And then we look for our like terms. So I have like terms 2x, 24x, negative 56x. And I also have like terms 48y and 2y. Okay, so we line those up and we add them together. It is totally okay to check in your calculator that you are adding or subtracting integers correctly. Okay, I recommend you doing that. So once we add them up, we should end up with negative 30x plus 50y. Okay. At this time, you can move on to your assignment for today. Hopefully, you understood this, but if you have questions, please make sure you get those clarified.